There you go.
My name is Cecil Ruby. I'm an alcoholic. I'm really, really grateful that I've been sober this time since July 15th, 1997. And that people like you have continued to show up and be here and help me to understand what the words in this book mean. I want to qualify myself a little bit. My family started sending me to AA in October 1978. It took a while for it to take. I'm the kind of guy that I just could not resist the urge to drink. And when I drank, we didn't know what was going to happen to me. And I would break out in handcuffs is what usually would happen. I had my fourth DWI by Christmas Day, 1978. I'd already been in one treatment. I loved going to treatment. I went 8 times in 19 years. And my wife likes for me to say that it was a great opportunity for me to meet my next ex-wife. I've been married to Miss Marty Ruby since February 5th, 2005, and we've been together since sometime in December 97. But and for all of this, I am so grateful. I didn't think I was one of those that was going to get this thing. I saw AA work for other people. But when you go in and out for 19 years, you see it work on other people. You see other people get sober and become successful and stay. And yet I was the kind of guy that just kept going back out. Phil, I want to thank you for inviting me over here to Kingsport, Tennessee. It looks like a beautiful area. Y'all are probably experiencing some fall colors right now. We have 2 fall colors, green or brown. And that's all we get over here in Texas. And I noticed that you're only 2 hours from a little town called Hazard, Kentucky, where a good friend of mine is, Don D. I have a sponsor who has a sponsor, and I sponsor men who sponsor men, and that was not always the case for me. I came in, and the book talks about, I only went to treatment number 8 because it would be money my sisters wouldn't get. I'm that shallow of a guy. I grew up in a Texas family that built highways and working men, and they were pretty successful at it. I'm the oldest of my father's second marriage. I had 2 younger sisters. I recently lost my baby sister. And if I want to touch on anything tonight, it's probably around grief, because we do have situations occur for us where we lose people. Like I said, I really didn't have any hope of getting this thing. I agreed to go to this facility in Minnesota only because it'd be money my sisters wouldn't get. And the thing that happened that night was, that very first night, was I was sitting on the back patio of this detox center, and this woman that worked there, also named Marty, not my wife Marty, but a different Marty woman, was talking about this black spot in her gut. And I had never, in all the time I'd gone to AA, heard anybody talk about this black spot. And I was so keenly aware that I had this huge hole in me that I would shove things into trying to fix me. and it started when I was a kid, like with that red bicycle. If I just get that red bicycle, everything's going to be great, and it moves on to vehicles and guitars and relationships and even children, and the thing was that I never, ever had the experience of that hole being filled. Now, I'd never heard anybody talk about it, but once I've been in AA for some time, I come to understand it. What they're talking about is that God hole. The only thing that'll fill it is God, right? And this woman had been sober for a long time, and she was working at this facility, and she had talked about how her hole had shrunk down to where it was just a spot. And I was keenly aware of having this hole, but I'd never heard anybody talk about it. And for God to put another woman named Marty on that back patio when I only went there out of spite, it just caused me to settle down and to just start following some directions that people would give me. I came back to Austin and started going to meetings, and I started hitting meetings hard. I hit 2 meetings a day. My son had decided to live with me, and I think he was 12 or 13 at this time. And I was so grateful that he did, because I had subjected him to all kinds of trauma and terrible situations he did not need to experience. So I was grateful to have that opportunity to repair some of that. Marty and I became involved. We went to work in the construction business, which is what I'd always done. And it talks about in this book that usually we take one of 2 tacks. We either want to do this work out of the book all the time, or we want to get our feet back on the ground in business. And so that was the direction I went. And what happened was I ended up getting a sponsor, and I went to 1 meeting a week while I was working. And my sponsor and another man kept trying to get me to sponsor other people, and I wouldn't sponsor them. My favorite word is no, and I rebel at everything. And they wanted me to sponsor guys, and I just wouldn't do it. I was afraid. I was so terrified that I was going to mess somebody up, that I did not have enough of this work down, that I didn't know what I needed to be doing, despite the fact that I've got a sponsor telling me that I need to be sponsoring other guys. I thought that it would be okay if I waited till I had 10 years. I don't know what it was about 10 years. That was also the date, that the time frame I would give when my wife wanted to go to a conference. I'd say, let's hold on. Let's don't get too big a rush on this stuff. Let's wait till I've got about 10 years. So, 1 meeting a week, doing a lot of construction, and things don't go well. What happens when we're not moving forward, progressing in these steps, is that we start to go backwards. There's a sentence on the bottom of 63 that says, next, we launched out on a course of vigorous action, the first step of which is a personal house cleaning. So that's just one part of that vigorous action. And I wasn't getting it, What I was getting was a whole lot of resentments. And I would take them to my sponsor, and my sponsor would have me do what was called a checkbox inventory. And one thing that I really love about the checkbox inventory is the area that I get to write about what it is I'm so disturbed about is really small. So there's no room to put and. But what happens for a guy like me is I start going back to my sponsor and saying, she's doing it again. I've got a mother that calls me Nick. She calls me Nick. I mean Nicholas. I mean Cecil. And my name has no Nick to it. I am James Cecil Ruby III. And I would just get so distraught about this, just constantly showing back up to the sponsor going, man, she's doing it again. And I don't know what to do about it. It's just really irritating me a great bit. So he had no clue what to do with me. And he was a big step 3 sponsor. He was real big about reading 60 to 63, finding ourselves in there. Now, he would have me read portions of 60 to 63, like just read, Cecil, for you, for this week, just read 60 to the bottom of 61 and stop. And then at the end of the week, you can go on and read 62 and 63. Like something's going to happen. And it just never did, you know, because see, I'm the kind of guy that is always looking for the shortcuts. You know, page 19 at the bottom, it says most of us sense that real tolerance of other people's shortcomings. Doesn't say all of us, it says most of us, you know. So I find these loopholes. And the loophole was that I'd been checking all these boxes and I hadn't been paying attention to why I was checking them. I might have in the beginning, but I wasn't getting the relief I needed to get. I wasn't finding out what it was I was doing, where I was messing up, where I was to blame, where did I start this ball rolling, you know? And I just wasn't getting it. And by this time, I'm like 7 years dry and still not sponsoring anybody, still not going to any conferences. My dad, I loved my dad. My dad and I had a great relationship. And it just got better when I quit drinking, you know. And he had asked me to come out and help him. He had what was called an ultralight type aircraft. It was basically a go-kart with wings with a big motor and a propeller, you know. And he had bought this thing and he had been taking lessons. And the first time he took it up, he crashed it with another guy. And he asked me if I'd help him fix it. And so I did. I wanted to help him fix it. Now, there's a part in the inventory that talks about fear, you know. And I hadn't been doing anything that I needed to be doing inventory-wise. I really wasn't doing much on step 3 either. You know, there's something about planes. There's something about God. You know, I was holding on to an old idea about God that I came in with and I hadn't been talking to anybody about. And that old idea was that God hated me so much that if I was in a plane and that plane crashed, I'd survive because he wanted me to have a long, miserable life. Now, I came up with that concoction way before I got sober, but it was still there. It was still raw. It was still unobserved by me and a sponsor. And the part that really bothered me at step 3 was where it talked about as we understood him, you know, because every time I read that piece on the 3rd step, God, as we understood him, it's in italics and it's like I'm supposed to pay attention to that. And every time I read it, that old idea would creep back in and I didn't know what to do about it. So hadn't been doing anything that I was supposed to be doing. 7 years dry. My dad wanted me to help him fix this ultralight type aircraft, which I did. Now I'm scared to death to fly with my dad. And he had been telling me for probably 6 or 8 months that he can't wait to take me flying. And I did not know what to do. I didn't want him to see that I was afraid of flying with him. And so when we got this thing fixed, he was sitting in it. We had gassed it up. And I said, come on, let's go. And his response to me at the time was, I promised your mom I wouldn't fly again until I got more lessons. And my response out of cockiness was, when did you ever listen to mom? Which is a true statement, because my dad really rarely ever listened to my mother. But what happened from that, I believe, is that there were two men that were both afraid. I think my father was scared to disappoint me, and I think I was scared to disappoint my dad. And we flew, and we crashed, and he died. And I was in such a terrible place. I'd gotten married February 5th, and this was May 27th of 2005. And I didn't know what to do. I mean, I was just in such unimaginable grief. I really didn't know what to do. And the thing that happened was somebody like you came along, surrounded me, grabbed me, took me to a detox meeting over at Shoal Creek, the last place I detoxed at. And we took a meeting over there every week. And we'd go up on the 5th floor, and we'd get the guys that were detoxing. We'd tell them we had pretty girls and popsicles downstairs in the cafeteria, and they would follow us down there. And we would talk about whatever it was we were reading out of the book at the time. And the thing was that there was one guy that asked me to sponsor him, and I didn't say no this time. A guy named Jim. Now, the funny thing about Jim was, at some point, Jim asked me a question. He said, why are the steps written in the past tense? And I had no clue, and I had just enough audacity to tell him, that's a great question. I don't know. Let me try and find out for you. I had started working with somebody who was trying to teach me how to do a fully written inventory at the time. And I'd gone back to this person and I'd asked that question. See, I had no clue what that as we understood him was about. It didn't have anything to do with me. This was the steps as the first 100 were doing it. They were doing it. That's why it was in past tense. This is what they had done. Not me. I'm so grateful to that guy for asking that question, because I had no clue. And right then it just came in full focus that didn't have anything to do with me, that I got an old idea that I got to throw out there to my sponsor and do some work on. I don't have to hang on to that stuff. So it started me on that path to saying yes, right? I still have a knee-jerk reaction to say no. And so much has occurred from me saying yes, and being on this journey with y'all and others. We get sober and we automatically think that everything's just going to be a bed of roses. Like, because I'm sober now, everything's supposed to go just perfect. And it doesn't. Life happens on life's terms. And a lot of times I don't know what to do about that. One of the things my sponsor talks to me about, I got a guy lives in Sulphur Springs, Texas. It's my sponsor. And he talks to me about that we do not have a treatment for grief, that's something we all get to walk through. And I'm so fortunate that I've had the people walk with me on that road of grief for my dad. I didn't know, there was a time in my life where my son was not doing that great. He's also a good member of this organization, but there was a while that I was really, really worried about him. And my family back in 1979 had paid a large amount of money to keep me out of prison. DWI number 4 and some other charges. And that's back in 1979. I mean, you got to stop and think about that. They used to drive you home back then. So you know how to be messing up really, really bad to stack that many, because I'm the kind of guy that keeps going to jail when I drink. And it's not all highfalutin driving while intoxicated. There's also a stack of public intoxications 2 grown men got to tiptoe to shake hands over. You know, I was just really amazed that the judge told me the last time in 96 that if I got arrested for public intoxication again, I'd have to do 6 months in the county jail. I was just shocked. I was like, I looked at him like, you got to be kidding me, man. But he wasn't. So those kind of things matter. And what happened was my son started getting these things. My son started getting the public intoxication. And he became insistent that I help him with his legal bills, and I wouldn't. I have it somewhere in my head that if I'd have been held accountable at the time in 1979 to pay back that money, then maybe I wouldn't have gone to treatment 6 more times on top of the 2 that they paid for then. You know, that's just some of this thinking, this logic that goes on in my head. And so he got really, really angry with me, but eventually he got DWI number 3 and went and did whatever he needed to do to get in this deal and join the club. I will tell you that my sponsor also talks about dollar for dollar and love for love, and sometimes love for hate, that we owe these amends, you know, and I have repaid my family everything that they have put out on me. I'm the kind of guy that was thrown off of the family ranch. I was told, don't come back here. And fully expected that I would never, ever return. I'm the guy that gets to take care of my mother, my 89-year-old mother in assisted living. I get to take her whatever she needs 2 or 3 times a week, spend some time with her visiting. I'm the one that got to move her when she wanted to move or when she needed to move to another facility, you know, and I'm that guy that gets to keep showing up doing that kind of stuff. Now, I could be upset at I've got another sister that doesn't do much in that regards. I could be upset about that all day long, but it's not going to help anything. You know, it's just going to show my ideas about who needs to be in charge, and it doesn't need to be me. I got a buddy in Baltimore. He just came down for Lakeside Conference. Lakeside Conference, I think, was it its 63rd year on the beautiful shores of Lake Brownwood. And the guys that are on the board have these ribbons that say director. And my buddy Jack in Baltimore is going to come up with some ribbons that say actor, you know, because that's what we really are, is just the actor. And I just live for that 60 to 63 stuff. My sponsor reads 60 to 63 twice a day. And you would think that he would know it word for word by now, but he doesn't, evidently, because he still does it. And so I try to read 60 to 63 once a day and then continue on with that process. I'm the kind of guy that I find myself in those pages all day long. See, I go to the grocery store. I want to get in the 10 items or less aisle. Only I'm going to be having the badge on. I'm going to start counting the items in the baskets that are none of my business. And I might even point it out to you. Hey, you got 12 items in there. This is a 10-item aisle, you know? Left to my own devices, that's what happens to me. I get in the left lane of the highway and I expect things to go fast. You know, I'm the kind of guy that thinks I need to be driving 85 miles an hour, that there needs to be a group of you way ahead of me that I won't catch, and a group way behind me that's not going to bother me. And that's not what happens. Thank God my sponsor says you don't have any of those AA bumper stickers on your car. Like, take it easy and but for the grace of God, right? Those stickers are for me, not the traffic. So I will tell you this, my first international AA was in San Antonio, and I did not want to go. My wife and I were at a restaurant that we really liked down there the night before it was to start, and there were a few people down there with their name badges and the green lanyard, right? I don't know if any of y'all made San Antonio, but it was a great time. There you go. Green lanyard. There was one or two people in this restaurant that were a little loud. And I was like, I did not want to be associated with the green lanyards. And I told my wife, I said, darling, do we really need to wear the green lanyards? And her response, as usual, was, I don't know what you're going to do, but I'm going there first thing in the morning. You know, so like a good husband, I'm there following her, going to get my green lanyard, and I'm going around to all the meetings, the workshops, the speakers. People are playing with beach balls in that arena. I mean, just an incredible experience, you know? And having a ball. Now, all of the bars downtown San Antonio have put up signs saying we serve coffee too. There's 50, 60,000 alcoholics downtown San Antonio. And I come out of the last speaker meeting on Sunday morning. I guess it's around noon. And I'm noticing that the only people that look out of place, the only people that might not belong, don't have a green lanyard on. You know, I grew up thinking I was one of those people that just didn't fit in. And what an experience to sit there in downtown San Antonio with the green lanyard and realize that I'm with my people, you know, that I get to be a part of this thing. And so I'm going to go to every international I can. I went to the Atlanta. What a tremendous experience that was. And again, I'm the guy that's got the badge on. You know, I'm the guy that's got the badge on in the AA meeting. I'm the guy that's got the badge on at the international meeting. And Sunday morning, they had a panel of 3, and one guy's got a jumpsuit on. And I'm like, oh my God, did his sponsor not tell him he's supposed to wear a tie and a coat? You know? And he starts talking, and he tells us that he's part of the fire crew out of prison, that they brought him there for the day to talk about his experience of being part of that fire crew in prison. And it's like, once again, I get to take the badge off and go, okay, I don't have any business judging anybody anywhere, and put it down. I generally do have a badge that I keep in the car. I can't find it right now. I like to pick it up when I start to do that stuff, because I do. Chuck C talked about children of God. They're all children of God, and they're all his sponsees or sponsors, that everybody that we're running into, that we're coming across, is helping us to understand what's going on with us and what it is we don't want to be doing, or they are me. I had one of my best friends, guy that was a roommate in the last treatment center I was in. I took his 21st chip to him September 1st in Hazard, Kentucky. And he didn't get sober right away like some of us don't. But the guy had an emergency operation 8-9 days later and had trouble in the recovery and ended up with some brain damage. And I got to go sit with him for another day and a half over there around the 20th of September. And just be there, just be with him. And that's what this program teaches us, is how to show up. Friends and family, continue to show up. I talked to his son, who's also in recovery. He's got 2 other sons that are, and I hope that they get this deal. My wife does a great deal to teach me about how to practice the principles of this program. My baby sister, I had a huge resentment against her before I got sober, and I held that resentment for a long time. I've had resentments against all my family members, but eventually I get to make those amends and make things right. And one thing my dad had done in his will was he set me and my baby sister up as being in charge of his family's ranch and what happens on it. And we had to learn how to get over those differences and how to start working together. And that we did. And I was able to bring my baby sister home into our house. The house that I live in now is on the ranch. It's the same house that my father grew up in. I'm so fortunate to get to be a part of this. I did not want to come back here. I still could say no on occasion, but my wife was insistent, so we moved. But my baby sister, Jessie, had breast cancer and metastasized in her body. I had a men's conference that I was expected to be at the last weekend in March, and Jessie had gone back in the hospital. And my wife went and stayed with my sister in her room all weekend long until I got back and we took her back home. And it just showed me what we do, how we do it. Love for love. How are we going to show up? I miss my sister dearly. And I wish she was here with me today, and she's not. I miss my father dearly. And I wish he was here with me, and he's not. My mother's just down the street, 7 minutes. And I get to go see her. Now, I've got an older brother from my father's first marriage, and my sponsor taught me that we don't use the word step or half. He's my brother. Believe it or not, his first name's James, and he got to use it. He goes by Jim. And I was always so irritated about that. Why did he get Jim? And I got stuck with Cecil. When I was young, the kids were always saying Cecil and Beanie or Then that song came out by Simon and Garfunkel about Cecilia, you know, and I'm that guy, you know, that other people would taunt and tease just to watch me squirm, you know, because I can squirm, let me tell you. So I had my brother, my sponsor told me at one point, he says, I got a feeling you haven't made all your family amends. And I just blew up at him. And I said, you don't understand. He is not my brother. See, I had an idea that something had happened as a child that had caused me to hate this brother so much that I would treat him like he didn't exist. We would be at a wedding or a funeral, and I did not even talk to him. And my sponsor's good. He said, come on, man, you got to go set that right. And I said, well, I haven't done the inventory on it. So he waited a week or two and he says, come on, it's time. Go get it done. Now I'm going to tell you what I was so deathly afraid of with my brother was I was scared to death that when you ask him, what must I do to make this right, that he was going to want to eat once a week, like go to lunch or something. And I was just so terrified that that's what was going to happen. And you know what he said was, let's just break bread once a year. Now, my brother lives down the street from me. What happened from me making that amends is whenever my brother calls, I cannot wait to pick it up. When we see each other on the street in our separate vehicles, we stop, back up, and chat. And I would be delighted to break bread with my brother once a week if he so chose. You know? And I had no clue that that was what was waiting for me on the other side. You know, we get so afraid of making those amends, and they're absolutely vital. They're vital. I get to sponsor a bunch of guys now, and I get those guys sometimes they want to balk at making an amends. They want to balk at going to a conference. They want to balk at this or that, sponsoring guys, you know. And I throw that question out that my sponsor threw at me. What lengths are you willing to go to? You know? And the answer is any. Absolutely any and all. Traditions. I'm the kind of guy that used to I went to a big group in Austin before we moved back to the ranch, and they would have 12 and 12 night, one night of the week. And if it was on a step, I had something I could say if I needed to say it. But if it was on a tradition, I had no clue what to do with the tradition. I had no idea. And I didn't know how vital traditions were for all my relationships. My relationship with my group, my club, my AA, my family, my wife, my children, my brothers, my sister, my sponsees, my sponsor, all of it. What's going on in the world today? I can address it all through the principles that I get to learn in the traditions. Now, one of the traditions talks about elder statesman and bleeding deacon. And it has been my experience that I have got some suffering to do as a bleeding deacon before I ever get over to the elder statesman portion, if I do, you know. And that's where I want to be, truly. But they're so vital that the guys that I get to work with and myself have a meeting once a month where we talk about the tradition of the month. We got a guest coming tomorrow evening talking with our group about Tradition 10. And I'm so grateful for that, to have that opportunity. Being of service in the groups of vital for me. I'm the GSR for my group. I never did that in the past. You know, I spent so many years just saying no to everything. I've had a guy that didn't sponsor anybody, but he got so involved in the service structure that he failed to sponsor people. And he wasn't getting what he needed to be getting. And eventually, when we talked about that, it changed. I'm so grateful that I keep getting people in my life that are helping me to understand what I need to understand. I don't have so many sponsees because I'm that great a sponsor. I have so many sponsees because I'm that sick. God keeps sending them to me. And for that, I truly am grateful. Emotional sobriety. I would love to believe that it didn't exist, but I believe that it does. I had a guy named Charles Clark, and Charles Clark is one of those big meeting makers that's gone on to the big meeting in the sky. And Charles used to tell me that he didn't start getting the pause when agitated or doubtful until he had 13 years. And what I would do was think, well, there's no use in me really trying right now, you know. Let's see what happens when I got 13 years. Guess what didn't happen? The pause. You know, I found that the pause is on page 87. And if I'm doing the work that's on page 86 on a more regular basis, more frequent basis, that I'm more likely to pause when agitated or doubtful. I'm more likely not to say something that might cause harm to somebody else that I'm going to have to go clean up, that I get to go clean up. That's another thing I want to talk about is attitude. I think it's page 72 that talks about that second sentence just is so important to me. My wife was working with some guys and I got really, really jealous and I didn't want to admit it. And when I went and did the inventory with my best friend, JC, who's also going on to the big meeting in the sky, JC told me I was jealous and I hated him for it. Oh my God, I did not want to be jealous, you know. But the second sentence on page 72 says, we've been trying to get a new attitude, a new relationship with our Creator and discover the obstacles in our path. And I got to sit with God and ask God, just like I do on page 86, about what my corrective measures are, you know. And I got to go make amends with that guy that I was jealous of. And he's one of my best friends today, you know. And I get to have the attitude. My attitude is that I get to, you know, I get to meet with these guys. I get to be friends with that guy. I get to clean up whatever it is I've done that I need to clean up and go on. And love for hate. Sometimes we've had parents that weren't that loving. Does that mean I don't have any responsibility of being that child and taking care of them to the best of my ability? I believe that I get to make that amends to them, love with love and support, and to be there and to take care of them the best I can. So, emotional sobriety is that place that I want to be. I think it's where I'll wear my garments a little more loosely. They won't be so tight fitting. You know, I won't have so much trouble in the 10-item aisle. I won't be telling the other drivers how they need to be driving. I won't be telling the sponsee how they need to be sponsoring, how they need to be sponseeing, you know? And my sponsor says, put my arm around their shoulder and less likely to poke them in the chest. And that's what my sponsor does for me. And that's what I want to do for the guys that I get to work with as well. I think that's about it for time. Is that right, Phil? Okay. Do y'all pass out chips?
No, we don't.
Okay. You want me to do a prayer?
After we're done with this, but I'm just gonna, you're done. Okay. Thank you so much.